On today's show, we bring in strategic internet marketing consultant Logan Flatt, and we discuss a fascinating, profitable flip with some really interesting, unexpected twists and turns along the way. Plus, it's a crypto domain, and we all have a lot of interest in that too. Enjoy the show. First, serious about online trading? Secure your funds, keep your merchandise safe, and use a company that keeps the buyer and seller protected the whole way through. That's escrow.com. Payments you can trust.
It's built by domain investors to increase your inquiries, sales, and profit. Forget spreadsheets and archived emails. Manage your entire investment portfolio in one place using a secure and completely confidential platform. Learn more at ft.com. That's EFTY, ft.com.
Hey, Sherpa Network. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Tess Diaz, executive producer of DomainSherpa.com. And today we are joined by our old Sherpa friend, Logan Flatt. Hi, Logan. How you doing?
Hi, Tess. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. It's been about a year since we got together in Dallas, but I have that picture still. And we'll definitely, I think I'm going to post it as part of this video. Logan has the coolest license plate of any domainer I know. So Logan, you have been domain investing since 2009, but you were also a strategic consultant for a marketing agency. And I think that's how you first became aware of domain name values, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I started doing internet strategy consulting back around 96, 97 to large corporations that were trying to get online back then and have an e-commerce presence back at that time frame. And so I've always been involved with domain names. I just wasn't smart enough to invest in them way back then.
Well, you were smart enough to be an internet consultant in 95, 96. Yeah. That's pretty cutting edge. And you've always been so good at seeing the big picture. So I'm really excited today. You have an interesting and very well studied profitable flip to share. So 83% net profit. And you gave me this amazing timeline from the day the domain was registered. Love it. So let's jump in. So this is cryptocpa.com.
Yeah.
You sold recently. In fact, we waited to film this until the sale officially closed.
That's right.
So it's fun to be part of that process with you, Logan. Why don't you take me through the high end and then we'll break it down?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, Crypto CPA. CPA stands for Certified Public Accountant. And obviously a big demand for accountants who can know how to do accounting for cryptocurrency transactions and things like that. And so it's a domain name that I found at one point and ended up paying like $144 for it in total. But sold it once, didn't go through, sold it again, went through, ended up making about $15,200 gross for the domain name.
Beautiful, beautiful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So the domain was first registered in 2013.
That's right.
And, you know, it's a good point. What do they say? The only things that are certain in life are death and taxes.
Right.
So you got to look at, crypto CPA. If crypto's an emerging market, taxes in that emerging market. Brilliant, right? Yeah. So it was registered a year later. You mentioned that it went pending delete and no one bought it again for over a year. And I think that's a neat part of your research process, Logan, that you notice that part of the history. Because a domain name, so if you look at cryptocpa.com right now in the Whois, you would show that it's registered originally in June 7th, 2016. But that's just this current life for the domain. It was also registered in 2013 and someone changed their mind and let it go or forgot about it or something. And then no one else thought of it or decided to purchase it for, over 2 more years. That's interesting to note that there was a missed opportunity there in the beginning.
It's interesting because back in 2013, Bitcoin was only $826 per Bitcoin. Somebody registered it. They did it under privacy, so I couldn't see who it was, but they let it drop a year later. Like you said, it didn't get picked up for another year. So finally in June 2016, a guy in Russia came along and hand registered it again, about the time when Bitcoins were like $584 a Bitcoin. But he let it drop the next year as well. And so it went to auction.
Funny. Yeah. But that year it went to auction and got some attention. So even though Bitcoin pricing was lower, probably global awareness was growing for it. You would think, right? So, okay. So it goes to auction a year later, July 2017. It's won at auction. And it is super cool. I don't know if it would be easy to post this, but you put together a really neat Excel spreadsheet that shows that each item that happened to the domain, but then also the cost in both cash US dollar and in Bitcoin at that time. And that's really, really neat. So it went for $120 at auction, June 17.
Yep.
And it was pretty much immediately listed for more or less 14,488 at Uni Registry.
Right. Yeah. So as soon as I won it at the auction, $128, I had to pay, GoDaddy requires you to pay a renewal fee right there. So it's like $135 I got into it at that point. But I immediately thought, because by this point, Bitcoin's worth $2,300. So it's gone up, a good bit since it was first registered. So I thought maybe it was around $15,000 that I could put it out there at University Market. So I put it out there to buy now price and basically waited.
Okay. And when you noted different changes in Bitcoin pricing, then you repriced it in January 2018 with a pretty big price slash, 8,400. Was it just the cost of Bitcoin that made you do that, or did you have other strategy or thoughts behind that?
No, it's pretty much because up until that point, Bitcoin was making its big run up to about $19,000 per Bitcoin. So around December 18, 2017, it really peaked at $19,500. And then it started to basically just collapse. And so by January 15th of 2018, it was already back down to about $14,000. And I started to kind of lose, some of my own belief in Bitcoin and what this thing was. And so I really felt that maybe this cryptocpa.com really wasn't worth $15,000. So I ended up putting it out there at University Market for about $8,400 as buy it now. And then I also had to make offer on the page as well. So someone finally did come along and a few days later and make an offer.
And does that indicate to you that someone was watching it and wondering if that would change? Or do you think it just happened to be, I noticed it was at the very beginning of a new calendar year. People are just redone their taxes. People are thinking about accounting.
Exactly.
Do you have any insight on why that buyer came along 3 days after you repriced it?
I do think he was watching. He was a younger accountant out of Delray Beach, Florida, and he basically, January, he was thinking about taxes because he was doing taxes for other people, and he was, wanting to do his own taxes as well, I'm sure. But obviously, he had a business as a CPA and was interested in buying this domain name. But he came along and he initially offered $6,000 for the domain name. So I thought, hey, that's a good offer, right?
It is.
But I countered back to him that, hey, thank you for the offer, but the lowest we could do is like $7,900. And but he immediately comes back and makes me an offer, which I thought was very interesting. He said that he offered me that instead of $8,400, what if he pays me $10,000? Okay. By April 18th, which is 3 days after April 15th, which is the tax period, right? But he wanted to pay me $10,000 for it if I would take it off the market. So he said he put 20% down, put it in escrow, and then pay the rest later. And he understood that if he didn't finish the transaction, he would forfeit his $2,000 up front. So I thought about it, for a while, and I came back the next day and basically said, well, I wouldn't take 20% down, but I'll take 30% down. And then he could pay basically $100 in February, $100 in March, and then the remaining $6,800 he could pay in April. So after, maybe presumably he was going to get a tax refund or something himself, and he thought maybe he'd have it by then and that he could pay that last bit off. But I made it clear to him that, he's got to make all the payments, and if he doesn't make them all, then he forfeits whatever payments he had made to that point, which is part of the agreement. And that's also typically part of the escrow.com agreement when you make a payout like that. And that's basically what we agreed to, was $3,000 up front, $100, then $6,800.
That's, great negotiation. Just asked for a little bit more. Also that, steady interest, even more than the income, of $100, but to keep them remembering that this was a payment and actively somehow even emotionally invested in the domain. Was that your thought behind the $100 a month?
Yeah, and I wanted him to be more committed than $2,000 up front. I wanted $3,000 up front, and then I wanted to make it easy for him on the $100 payments. But then if he's going to get this big lump sum check or whatever after the tax season's over, then he can make that $6,800 final payment. Sure.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I was wrong. He didn't finish all the payments.
Okay, but you got to keep the initial down payment, so not so bad. Okay. So first, you folks discussed terms.
Yes.
You came to an agreement verbally. How did you memorialize that? Was it difficult? Do you have a contract template? I assume you used escrow.com?
Yeah, I basically crafted a purchase agreement, and I did it right there in Registry Market in the platform they have there, that he could, we could always come back to this documented session where our negotiation is being documented. But I wrote the agreement there, and we agreed to it there. And then when it went to escrow.com had their own agreement. But I sent that agreement he and I agreed to, sent it to escrow.com. Escrow.com had its own agreement because they wanted to make sure their rights were included in the agreement amongst all three of us. And but it was very similar. It wasn't too different in the end. And escrow.com did a great job in setting it all up and helping the buyer make his first payment. He made the first $3,000 payment, plus he paid the escrow.com fees at the same time. It was about $300 for that, for them to manage the payment process over the 4 months.
So Logan, I think this is really interesting to note. You negotiated the terms on one platform, Uni Registry. So were you even emailing, or you were just messaging through Uni?
Just messaging through Uni Registry.
Okay. Then you agreed to terms. Then you utilized Uni to write those terms up. And then you went to escrow, and of course escrow needs their interests included in all of this, or their terms, right? So, it's scary to get someone to agree just one time, but then to get them to agree a second time can often be a stumbling block or a moment for them to walk away. Did you feel like that was a difficult something to overcome, or did you feel like with this particular buyer it wasn't a big deal?
I didn't think it was a big deal because we were already right there negotiating in the email stream at Registry Market. It was just me typing up what looked a little bit more formal, and it said the dates of the payments when they were due and the consequences of not finishing the payments.
And you did that in what, like a Word doc that you uploaded to Uni, or?
No, just right there in the Uni platform.
Okay.
And we both agreed to those terms. And I said, okay, well, I'll send this over to escrow.com and they'll get it set up. But just escrow.com had their own agreement that they wanted us to both sign, but it was the same terms. It was, it was very simple to do. I wasn't worried about the risk of that at all, because we were pretty much confirmed in our agreement.
Are you saying it's like the standard escrow terms that you agreed to, or there was something extra?
Escrow, had basically its standard terms, but it had my same payment agreement kind of baked into their agreement, so that everyone understood what the terms were and what escrow.com's responsibility was in that agreement as well.
Okay. And, most likely that's just a statement to escrow's credibility in the market, that I think it makes it very easy for people to understand, oh, there's just another button to click. And to just the ease of the process in escrow, the ease of transit. Uni and escrow have worked very well together to integrate their processes. Right. And so probably that really helped to overcome that potential stumbling block there too. So good for you. So you enter into the terms January, end of January 2018.
That's right.
Okay. And it's funded, no problem. It's still end of January. I mean, he was pretty quick. And then he just misses the final payment, the $6,800, the balloon.
He missed that payment. And the thing was that he went totally dark. I mean, I sent him emails through the registry platform. Escrow.com sent him payments. Sent him emails as well directly to him because he was a customer of theirs as well. But he just went totally dark. He just did not respond at all. And we sent him emails saying, "Hey, we're gonna basically around the end of around May 11, Escrow.com sends him a message saying, "Hey, you got a 7-day cure period where you got to make this payment, or you're going to be in default of the agreement, and we're gonna allow the seller to keep all the payments that you've made to date, and we're going to give the seller the domain name back."
Yeah, and Escrow does a great job just streamlining that as well.
Yeah, it's super easy for me, and but we never heard from him, so he didn't cure the transaction, and so I got to keep my $3,200 that he made up until that point, and I got the domain name back to my in-registry account from escrow.com. So it was a transaction where I made $3,200 on not selling the domain name.
Wow. Yeah. Now, do you think that he was trying to boost his business and instead of actually receiving his own personal tax refund, he was trying to just, what if he was spamming people? What if he had, a website up directing business and thought that he'd get so much extra CPA business by April 15th that he'd be able to pay it off?
I really don't know. I just know that he was a younger CPA, probably starting out. Maybe thought he could differentiate himself in the marketplace by focusing on crypto transactions. Because back then, quote unquote, a couple of years ago, it was very unknown. It was very strange how to even account for cryptocurrency transactions. This might have been before the IRS even put out their own documents on how to account for cryptocurrency transactions. So it really could have been a great point of differentiation in the marketplace for CPA at that time.
Very, very true. And did you have anything in place protecting you from, or protecting the domain value from, if it got blacklisted for spam or anything like that? Or you weren't really worried because you could just kind of see where he was going?
Well, in the terms, I said that if he were to use it in such a way that would have a negative impact on the value of the domain name, he would be in default of the agreement. But he never used the domain name during the period that he was making payments, so it was never an issue.
So there was no website put on it, nothing like that?
Nope.
Even though he could have?
He could have, yes. Escrow.com would allow him to use the domain name through their DNS system. Okay,
interesting. Mm-hmm. All right. So he defaulted, he went completely dark. And do you think that Bitcoin prices affected? Now, how did Bitcoin prices change from the time that you entered into the agreement until the time that he defaulted?
It was basically going down because, after January 2018, from $19,500, by the time he defaulted, I think it was about $8,300. So it had fallen by more than $10,000 by then. So, that kind of got me wondering about, is this domain really worth that much? Because this Bitcoin thing seems like everyone's kind of bailing out of it, and it seems not to have the promise that everyone thought it was going to have. So maybe this cryptocpa.com domain name really isn't worth all that much.
Yeah, and maybe he was going through that same thought process. Interesting. But he didn't turn around and say, "Hey, it's not worth anything, give it to me cheaper," or try to renegotiate in any way, shape, or form.
Right. He just went totally dark. until later. He comes back up later.
Oh, there's a great time for a commercial break.
Yes, right. Yes.
The suspense.
Yeah.
So next you listed the domain with media options. Now, thus far, you've done no outbound brokerage on it. You just had it listed on, as a buy it now at Uni, right?
That's correct. And because I thought, at that point that it had some value on its own and that people would find it. And this buyer obviously did find it and made an offer and just didn't go through, So,
okay.
So I decided to do an outbound approach to it. That was probably in July 2018 after I got it back from escrow. And
Yep.
You guys had announced you're going to be doing a crypto domain name newsletter. And so I let you know about that, and you guys ran it in July, but I don't think there was ever any interest in the domain name from the newsletter, so didn't sell.
Yeah, no, there were. 2018 was a huge year for crypto domain purchases in general.
Yep.
And Media Options ran this crypto newsletter for a period of time just to help with the demand. We didn't want to, overwhelm our regular newsletter being exclusively crypto names, but there was just such huge interest in it.
Yeah.
But no, nothing came through for cryptocpa.com as an outbound. Not an aggressive outbound, but just, putting it out there. And then, so it's neat, the automation that supported you in this process, Logan.
Mm-hmm.
How escrow automatically transferred the domain back to you after the buyer didn't cure. How then in September, the Uni registry broker, they knew did they automatically know that the sale fell through because of the connection between with them and escrow, or did you relist it?
No, it's a little of both. I had the setting. There's a setting within Uni registry market where you can say once a lead kind of goes dead, you can choose 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days for when a Uni registry broker can pick it up from you and try to go after the lead themselves. And I had that setting. It must have been 120 days or something at that point. Drew, I think his name is Zarchinsky, is a broker over at Uni registry, and he automatically sent out an automated email to the buyer who defaulted. Basically, he ends up talking to the guy later in October and got the guy on the phone because after he'd gone dark, but he did get the guy on the phone, and he said, and Drew was kind of excited because he thought, well, hey, he made those payments in the first place. Maybe we can get him to pick back up, right? And
sure.
I didn't want him to pick it back up. I wanted him to understand that $3,200 was a done deal, and that he'd have to start over if he wants to buy the domain name now, because we had an agreement and he didn't finish the agreement. But Drew talked to him, and he said he's no longer in the market. He had no funding for his business plan. So it just sounds like he didn't really have the financial means to really buy the domain name in the end. So he basically was a dead end, even though we got him back on the phone. But Drew himself was pretty adamant that he thought that I had this domain name priced too low, because at that point I had it back around the $12,000, whatever it was, and he thought that I should be pricing it around $35,000. And by this point, Bitcoin's around $6,500 a Bitcoin, and it's like, okay, I don't know how he gets 35,000, because to me the price is going down, and the whole market seemed to be going down by October 2018. So I was a little more skeptical about $35,000, but I did put $35,000 buy it now at Uni registry as well as at Afternic, just to see if the market would bear that price.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And did he give you any background to what went into that thought process for him?
I think Uni registry had been selling, other crypto domain names, and was getting pretty good prices at that time. Like Crypto World, Mike Mann had sold his for over $100,000, I think it was by that time, maybe. So there were comps out there, but I just, the whole temperature of the Bitcoin and crypto market by that point was just getting more and more negative. But by that point, I was shorting Bitcoin and making money shorting it. Then I made more money shorting it than I did actually owning it. And because by December 16th, 2018, Bitcoin hit its low point. It was $3,200 by December 16th. And so I just didn't think it was going to go anywhere anymore. I thought the market was totally deflated, and I just didn't really think that this domain name would be worth anything much anymore. But Uniregistry, or at least Drew, thought $35,000 was the right price for it.
That's neat. And I can say on the broker end, certainly, I mean, 2018 was hot for selling crypto domains to end users, because these crypto companies really have the most intimate view of their market. Right. And they knew that this market was going to continue to grow. And they knew they needed domain names and brands that would differentiate themselves within that market. Yeah. And so I think that just really speaks to the importance of getting a broker's perspective, because even though so many transactions are private in this industry, even if the broker can't tell you that, they can tell you, whoa, quadruple your ad. I mean, that's almost a quadruple, right? Yes. You were around 8 and you moved it to around, 8 something to 35-ish. That's, that's a big change. And you really, and you trusted the broker, but you had nothing to lose. Cause like you said, you were seeing what the market would bear. It's not like you were, in need of liquidating right away. So well done.
Yeah.
Well done.
Plus Bitcoin had fallen from $19,500 in January of 2018 all the way down to $3,000 by December 2018. So, and I was making money as it was going down. So I was more of a skeptic about Bitcoin than perhaps the broker was. And the broker did have more insight into the market for the domain names related to the space. So I just went with him and thought, $35,000 was where I'd price it, and I would wait. Yeah. But I waited about 5 months. So by May 2019, there had been no interest at $35,000 in the domain name. And just, again, I was just getting more and more skeptical about the value of the domain name itself. So when I saw, there was a broker named Michael Law. He works for QEIP. Yeah. Which I'd never heard of before. But I saw him post on LinkedIn about they were going to have a newsletter going out with fintech, crypto, and blockchain names. So I thought, well, hey, maybe I'll do another outbound on it, but I'm going to lower the price. I'm going to, I'm going to maybe lower it down to $15,000. And so I talked to Michael, and we put several of my blockchain and crypto names in a newsletter that went out later. But I did put crypto CPA at $15,000 in that newsletter, and I redirected all the landing pages for the domain names that I had in the newsletter to QEIP's DNS, so their pages would come up instead of Uniregistry Markets. So that newsletter went out around May 25th of this year. And they also, about a couple of days later, they followed up with some of the newsletter subscribers and kind of did outbound calls to them. And they immediately got a buyer on the line who was interested in the name and wanted to know more about could he do a payment plan on that $15,000. And of course, I'm like, oh yes, I love payment plans at that point, because I was like, okay, yeah, let's see if I get this guy to make payments on the $15,000 for the domain name, and maybe he'll default, or who knows. So Michael at QAIP started working with him to try to get to a point that we could agree on a price. And that took a little bit. Basically, I said yes, I'd be willing to finance it. But about a week later, early June, the buyer comes up with an offer, and his offer was $7,900 lump sum, or $10,000 in 4 payments.
Oh, your people like 10 grand in payments.
Right, that's right. And he suggested a 40, 20, 20, 20. So 40% up front, 20% over the next 3 months to get to the $10,000.
Now, was this purely the buyer's suggestion, or did Michael help set expectations and reframe something else that how sometimes buyers have their own ideas and then someone can kind of help them work that into a structure?
Yeah, I was pretty firm with Michael that if he wants to do payments, it's got to be for the full $15,000. And so Michael knew that. But the buyer himself came back with this offer, this counter offer.
Okay.
He'd be willing to pay $7,900 lump sum or $10,000 in payments.
Okay.
So I countered that same day with, well, I could do $13,500 lump sum, but if you want to do payments, it's still got to be $15,000. So why not make that $7,900 lump sum a first payment on the $15,000, and then you can pay off the remaining $7,100 over, a time period, maybe up to 12 months. That would make it easier for you,
Yeah.
But the buyer didn't accept that. About 3 days later, he came back with another offer.
Okay.
Which was $8,900 lump sum or $11,000 financed over 4 months. And he told Michael he wasn't willing to go any higher. So I didn't necessarily believe that, but I countered with, okay, how about $12,000 lump sum or $15,000 in payments with $8,900 down, since he was willing to pay $8,900 in a lump sum. I thought, well, I'll take that as a first payment. And he can do the remaining $6,100 over up to 12 months. But about 2 days later, on June 13th, the buyer just accepts the $12,000 lump sum.
Huh. No insight into why or how that developed. It just boom.
No, it was just Michael working with him to get to a point, but it was also me working the price down. I was $15,000, pretty firm on $15,000 with payments.
Okay.
But I was willing to be more flexible if he could come up with a lump sum payment that was, probably not less than 80% of what my asking price was. I like to try to stay within 80% of what my asking price is.
Okay.
And, so $12,000, I think, is about 80%. But he agreed to the $12,000 lump sum. I agreed to that as well. And that too went to escrow.com. And by June 19th, we were making a transfer directly. The buyer and I were exchanging the auth code, basically.
Okay. So, that took about 19, 20 days. And it sounds like quite a few offers back and forth. If you had to guess, how many, offer, counter offer?
There were just those three. I believe there's three.
Okay.
Michael was working with the buyer along the way, staying pretty close touch. Because once he made that first offer, it was only about 5 or 6 days, I think, till we got to an agreement.
Okay.
And by that time, Bitcoin has got back up to $9,300. So, the value of this domain name was kind of going back up. If you think about how at the end of 2018, it was only $3,000, Bitcoin was. But by the time we closed this deal, it was about 3 times that. And so the value of cryptocpa.com to a CPA, and this buyer was a CPA based in New York and New Jersey, who wanted to differentiate himself in the marketplace as an expert on crypto transactions. By the time it's at $9,000, then it is a more valuable domain name. And I think by that time, paying $12,000 for it was a good deal for the buyer.
Yeah. I also think, the volatility in general, that's the thing with taxes. It doesn't matter if you made money or you lost money. You want somebody who can help that work for you in your taxes.
That's right.
And so even if these folks are losing money, they want an accountant who's going to know about it and help them write that off or somehow deal with that. Somehow benefit somewhere from it, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just interesting to see that the Bitcoin pricing, while it did affect the, perceived value or excitement at times, at the end of the day, any accountant knows they're going to make money off of this, win or lose. It's actually the volatility and the big changes in pricing mean people are winning big and losing big and needing to account for that on their taxes.
Right.
So,
and it also affected me in terms of, I was making money while the price was going down. And I was getting more and more skeptical about Bitcoin in general, about, it's just basically another .com bust or a tulip bubble, whatever, so I was just getting more skeptical about it. So my value of the domain name was going up and down as well as it was oscillating. So not only did it affect the buyer and the market, it affected me personally as a domain name investor, what my sense of value was for the domain name.
Yeah. And I think, in terms of seeing what the market would bear, you do know that if this particular buyer had this much trouble coming up with, the 15 grand, 35 grand was not going to get you anywhere. With, you know, so June 19th, you trade the auth code. And since it was a lump sum, June 20th, boom, you're done.
Yeah, that's right. And so Michael and the QEIP team took a 20% commission for doing a great job. I thought, definitely worth the money to have them find the buyer. So I was happy to pay them the $2,400 for their services. In the end, I got $9,600, I think, into our bank account at Media Code. And but what's interesting to me is the total value of the domain name over time. I only paid $144 for it. You include the $135 at the auction plus the renewal at GoDaddy, plus about $8.77 when I transferred it to Uniregistry, where I consolidate all my domain names. So I only had $144 in the domain name. But I sold it to a buyer who paid $3,200. So I got my money, got my $144 back there plus a profit. And then I sold it again for, $12,000. So that's about $15,200 gross that I made on this domain name, having paid $144 for it. But once you take out the $2,400 to QEIP for their brokerage services, I pocketed $12,600 net. Which is about an 83% net profit margin on that $15,200 that was involved in it. And in the end, I had almost a 9,000% ROI on this deal across the two transactions that occurred. So I was pretty excited, and I think it's a great domain name. I really hope that this buyer makes good use of it, can really differentiate himself in the marketplace as an expert on crypto accounting, and I'm excited to see what he does with it in the end.
Yeah, that's really neat. And it's neat, too, that the buyers that you did work with were both end users.
Yes.
Good for you. That's, you're really working with a good domain and with good brokerage services doing that. I've been spending a lot of time by the pool this summer. You've got your pool in the background there. Mm-hmm. I keep seeing these divers. Actually, sometimes when I take my daughter to swim team, the dive team is practicing, and I see they're really doing great, like those crazy flips and like Olympic-y stuff.
Yeah.
But I feel like this isn't just a profitable flip. This is that's what I'm seeing in my head, the fancy dive.
I see.
This is a profitable double back flip or something.
Yes. A ninja flip of some sort. Yes.
Yeah. Sure. Well done. Yeah. And I think too, Logan, that sense that you have of that you didn't go back to that original buyer and try to work something out, that you knew what the value was, you knew what you felt right about, despite all that volatility and uncertainty that you had about its value or viability, you still knew you don't go back and renegotiate after you're in the middle of a contract.
Yes. And I also know, being a finance guy, I also know CPAs. My brother and sister were CPAs, and they're not spendthrifts. So as a stereotype. And so I knew that the reason why I was skeptical at Drew's suggestion of $35,000, I knew my target audience were accountants. And I knew from my experience working and consulting with accountants and accounting firms and financial firms that, I don't know, I'm not sure an accountant's going to pay $35,000 for this name, but $15,000, $12,000, $10,000, that might be a little more fair, because this unique skill they have related to crypto accounting was something they could charge a premium for, with all these people making millions of dollars from their crypto transactions. They're probably willing to pay a good premium per hour to a CPA who understands it, understands the IRS treatment of it. And so I thought, yes, I could get an accountant maybe to pay up a little bit for a domain name related to it, but probably not $35,000.
Did you think it was more palatable to to an end user in that industry? Or did you think it was more like the ROI they would see in one tax year, one, tax season?
I just thought that, a smart CPA would know that there's people out there struggling with accounting for cryptocurrency transactions.
Mm-hmm.
And if they are truly experts at it and understand the IRS interpretation of them, then and they put themselves out there as an expert on that, they could probably make a lot of money in the first 1, 2, or 3 seasons, tax seasons, with this domain name and having that differentiation. Because by that point, obviously, Bitcoin was back at $9,000. Something was going to be happening. It was going to be in there in the future in some way. So it's something they could really start a new kind of business on and do well with.
Yeah, agreed. And then this wouldn't be a good interview if I didn't ask. So where's like Thanksgiving dinner with your family on this menu? On this Excel spreadsheet on your timeline? What did you try to sell it to your family of accountants?
No.
Did you discuss it with them? Did they disagree with you on what you were doing? What did they think about, you putting your foot in their area?
They didn't think anything of it. I didn't talk to them about it at all, so it wasn't a key point. So,
so no religion, no politics, and no domain names.
Yeah, they don't understand the whole domain name business I'm in, so I don't even talk about it really. So,
is that now? That's funny. Yeah, I think many of us relate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's different.
It is, and sometimes I feel like once I explain it, even if they got it, then they can't remember again.
Right.
It's a lot. It can be a lot to absorb, just like crypto can be a lot to absorb.
It's all very technical. So the layperson out there across America, around the world, it's too technical for them. And both domain names and crypto, which are both digital assets. A lot of people who are just not technical don't understand it, don't get it, and don't want to really try to understand it either. Even if they get some excitement of hearing about their friends making a bunch of money, or see the articles in the news about Bitcoin going up, to $19,500, and they may want to dabble in it, but they still don't understand it fully. It's too much of a risk for them to be fully involved. So.
Yeah. Now I have a question about the auction. When you originally purchased this domain back in July 2017, had you already researched that it had been purchased and dropped? Would that affect your decision to bid on something? Do you do that much research in what you bid?
I will if I see there are trademark issues potentially with the name, to see who owned it previously. In this case, no. As soon as I saw the domain name come across the screen, I saw crypto CPA, and I was already in the market for buying crypto and blockchain names. That I was like, oh, I want that one. Plus I just knew that, again, that some accountant out there would want it because it'd be something they could differentiate themselves with in the marketplace.
Huh. Okay. And what about selling to an end user like H&R Block or some big tax corporation? What were there any plans to do that? Any feedback about that kind of sale?
No, I really didn't think. I didn't really think it was a corporate domain because it's a singular CPA. There is another business at cryptocpas.com, but I didn't think about approaching them either, and I didn't think about outbounding this to any large corporations, things like that. I just didn't think the brand itself, Crypto CPA, lended itself to a big company. A lot of those big companies already have huge investments in their brand, like H&R Block, Liberty Tax, things like that. I shouldn't see what their interest would be in it, which also put a downward pressure on what I thought the value was. A big firm like that, if it were a different name, but in the same industry, that I thought maybe a bigger firm would want to buy it, then yeah, maybe $35,000 would make sense. But in this case, it just felt more like a mom and pop kind of name, and like a small CPA practice would buy it. And that's ultimately who bought it twice.
Twice.
Yeah, yeah.
Can't beat that, Logan.
Yeah.
Now, I think that your expertise and background as, in marketing strategy probably informed that decision, right? Because a big corporation like H&R Block, they might do 10 years from now, might do a marketing campaign, we know crypto or something, but they're not going to want crypto CPA or crypto CPAs to redirect to them and get some random minute amount of business for what they're doing. It's just not even worth the lawyer's time agreeing to buy it, right?
Yeah. And they don't go to market with CPA in any of their marketing. I mean, they don't necessarily care. Their market, the people they attract as consumers or customers, don't care about whether an accountant has a CPA designation or not. They just want their taxes done. They want their refund, and they may want a loan to get that refund quicker in advance. It's a totally different market. They're not like a high net worth individual who wants a CPA doing their taxes for them, who cares about that designation more. So I don't think H&R Block would ever want probably any domain name with the word CPA in it, certainly not crypto CPA.
Yeah, I think that foundational understanding that you had really informed not only your sales strategy, but also your pricing. That's really good. So huge congrats. And Logan, you're such a sport to come on here, and you were such a sport. I forget, how did we wind up connecting? I was in Dallas visiting family, and I think we just emailed, and I said, oh wait, you're in Dallas? And we went out to lunch. It was super cool, but you were always so open in the domain industry. Your fabulous interview, 2-3 months ago with Andrew Alleman, always so open in sharing your expertise. What do you see right now? Like, last thoughts, insights. What are you excited about? What are you working on? What are your thoughts right now in the industry, Logan?
Yeah, and one thing I talked to Andrew about was how I'm hoping that we can get the industry or the sector that we're in, domain name investing, more professionalized. I'd like to see more domain investors acting more professionally. I'd like to see more domain buyers acting more professionally. Just overall doing a more professional job of trading these domain names, these digital assets. And so, that podcast I did with him was more about professionalizing my business, creating Media Code LLC, having a CPA help me with the accounting side of it and everything else. I'm just encouraging everyone out there to don't just do this as a hobby. If you're really serious about it, get more organized, get more professionalized, and treat each other better. Don't put everybody down if you disagree with them or whatever. Just be very positive and supportive of the industry, and help us get a better reputation as domain investors. That we're going after these generic domain names that are not trampling on anybody's trademarks, and we're trying to do it the right way. But it's a legitimate business. It's just like real estate. It's just virtual. So. That to me is what's important, and me coming out here and talking about these things so other investors can see what I'm doing to try to make it a better business for everybody.
Wow, that is, a powerful message, and one that we, I think many folks do appreciate you sharing. And, I think as more and more people discover just not only the profitability of the domain industry, but it's just fascinating. It's exciting. It's interesting. And the people, because nobody goes to school and takes gets a degree in anything related to domains, let alone really a class, even digital marketing or classes. They might mention domains, but you can't even take one class on it yet. And so everyone in this industry is from such diverse perspectives, backgrounds, experience, that it really, really is such a fascinating group of folks, and you never know what's coming next. So I think, though, as more and more professionals enter this industry, I like how Drew Rosner always says, just making the pie bigger. And truly the more professional we are, the more that we build up our community, the more that we educate. I mean, that's DomainSherpa's mission, is we just, offer this education to level up the whole industry.
Right.
And it's neat to see how you do that individually, Logan. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think a big challenge is the irrational behavior of the buyer sometimes, where, they think that they're entitled to the domain name that you've had for 5, 6, 10 years. And they would never behave that way with someone who has an empty lot in their neighborhood, that someone's not using. They wouldn't approach them and say, "Hey, here's $50 for this lot that's worth $300,000." They wouldn't insult them with such a low offer, and they wouldn't insult them with actual words saying, "You're scum for having this domain name and not using it." They would never say that to the person in their neighborhood who owns that lot. They would treat them with respect, and if they're serious about it, they would find ways to get the money to buy the domain name at the price that the seller is trying to sell it at. But with domain names, it kind of goes out the window. And I think I think a lot of buyers just have this sense of entitlement that's not there unless they have a trademark situation where someone is sitting on a domain name that has their trademark in it, and they can prove to an arbitration panel that they indeed have rights that precede the rights that the domain name holder has in that domain name. So
there's a lot of education that needs to take place, but education can't even start without credibility, without trust.
Yep.
And that's why we as an industry really need to work on our presentation and encourage others who may be lacking that.
Yep.
And then, because you can't teach someone if they think you have nothing to teach in the first place. So, and I think a lot of progress has been made and will continue to be made. So, Logan, it's such a delight to have you on. I hope next time it's not so long. And I don't have any plans to be in Dallas soon, but when I do, I'll let you know.
Okay, well, I'm going to try to avoid Phoenix this summer, so don't expect me to come to Phoenix anytime soon. Okay.
No one visits Phoenix in July, ever.
It's already 100 degrees here, so I can imagine what it is in Phoenix. So.
Yeah, and big kudos to you. I know you put thought into your lovely background for all our viewers. We do not always have the prettiest backgrounds, but kudos to you. That is a beautiful rose garden.
Thank you.
And every so often I see the beach ball float by.
Yes. Little visual interest instead of just a blank wall, yes.
Yeah. I think now you just need to go outside and do the fancy dive, and that's how we're going to end, right, Logan?
Okay, that's right. I promise I'll do it after we're off the air. So.
Oh, all right. Okay.
Trust me.
We'll see you next time.
Thank
Take care.
you. Bye.